indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Here.
Councilmember Lentz.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. Report out from closed session.
Yes, Madam Mayor, the council met in closed session to discuss a real property matter. No decision was taken on disposition. Staff was given direction as to next steps for discussion.
We'll now move on to adoption of the agenda. Can I get a first and a second to adopt the agenda as it stands?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. Moving on to awards and presentations. Item B, proclaim November as National Native American Heritage Month. We'll go ahead and read it at this time. City of Brisbane Proclamation National Native American Heritage Month 2023. Whereas the City of Brisbane throughout the month of November recognizes National Native American Heritage Month by celebrating the rich ancestry and traditions of Native Americans and Indigenous peoples. And whereas Native American and Indigenous roots are deeply embedded in this land, a homeland loved, nurtured, strengthened, and fought for with honor and conviction through enduring cultures and contributions of all Native American and Indigenous peoples. And whereas, with more than 500 federally recognized Native American tribes, this month offers an opportunity to learn more about Native American tribes and to raise awareness about the unique challenges Native American and Indigenous people have faced both historically and in the present, and the ways in which tribal citizens have worked to conquer these challenges and have made immeasurable contributions to our county's progress. And whereas, despite these challenges and painful history, Native and Indigenous peoples, their governments, and their communities have persevered and flourished as teachers and scholars, scientists and doctors, writers and artists, business leaders and elected officials, and so much more. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council hereby proclaims the month of November 2023 as National Native American Heritage Month. We have the same person accepting both proclamations, so we will wait until the end of reading both of them. We'll now move on to item C, proclaim November 12th through 18th, 2023 as United Against Hate Week. Whereas attacks on immigrants, Muslims, people of color, women, Jewish people, the unhoused, and LGBTQ+ community are now more commonplace, resulting in an uptick in hate crimes, hate speech, and open promotion of xenophobic ideas. And whereas in 2017, responding to these events and to clearly state our shared values, the United Against Hate campaign was created in the Bay Area to declare our shared commitment to diversity and inclusivity. And whereas to further counter the divide currently facing our nation, cities across the country are organizing the 6th United Against Hate Week that will take place November 12th through 18th, 2023. And whereas campaign events will emphasize overcoming opposing perspectives, communicating in conflict, and partnering to achieve the common goals of promoting education, compassion, and cooperation, which are key to embracing differences between people. And now, therefore, the City of Brisbane proclaims November 12th through 18th, 2023 as United Against Hate Week in Brisbane. And we urge our community to come together to condemn acts of hate toward all persons and to reaffirm our commitment to building an inclusive and equitable community for all. Here to accept both proclamations is Mangesh Kolhatkar, Vice Chair of the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability Committee. Thank you. Feel free to say a few words.
Yeah. I'm honored to receive both these proclamations on behalf of the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability Committee, or the IDEA Committee. Brisbane sits on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramai Tush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. During National Native American Heritage Month, we wish to pay respects to the ancestors and elders of the Ramaitush Ohlone, who were the original stewards of this land, as well as to those who are still here, who continue to seek to care for the land, to uphold their traditions, and to care for the indigenous communities living within it. Moreover, United Against Hate Week is a call for 7 days of local civic action by people in every community to stop the hate and implicit biases that are a dangerous threat to the safety and wellness of our neighborhoods and our cities. To kick off the United Against Hate Week, the IDEA Committee will be hosting a short film festival to showcase shorts highlighting inclusion and diversity topics. It will be held right here in City Hall on November 12th, Sunday at 1:30 p.m. This event is free with refreshments and free posters available. Please come and support this event. Lastly, IDEA, along with the San Mateo County Libraries and Mothers of Brisbane, is sponsoring a community-led event for Diwali, short for Deepavali, a festival of lights celebration originating in India. This celebration will be held on Saturday, November 18th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Brisbane Library. Diwali marks the victory of light over darkness and the joy of life and love. Look out for more information on the city's social media outlets and email blasts. So there was yeah, there it is. So I thought I'd end this with this invocation. This, what you see here, is a Sanskrit slok. Sanskrit is one of the most ancient languages in the world. And this from the Upanishad scriptures, which are over 2,500 years old. They're universal in their appeal, do not prescribe to any particular religion. Therefore, this prayer is typically recited in most schools in India. That's well over 250 million children. And at the start of the day, as it's secular by nature and yet resonates with all humanity. I thought this would be a fitting invocation to close with as I accept these proclamations. To read it quickly, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya, om shanti, shanti, shanti. The transliteration is from untruth, lead me to truth, from darkness, lead me to light, from death, lead me to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful words. We'll now move on to oral communications number 1. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Oh,
Madam Mayor, there are some slips, if you could.
I see. Oh, sorry, they're in a stack that is for items that are on the agenda. I have one slip from Linda Salmon.
Honored council, greetings. There were just 2 things. One about the sand. I assume that we're
Oh, that's on the
keeping
agenda.
the sand. That is on the agenda?
Yes, so
Okay.
you should wait until
Maybe I
that time.
didn't see the whole agenda. I got 2 pages and it didn't show it, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wait on that. And then there was a written correspondence from Dana regarding land that was up for sale that, was part of the trail or near the quarry. Was that something that, I will catch up.
It's not,
Yeah.
you can speak on that item.
Yeah, I would be opposed to any sale of land that's adjacent to the habitats.
Okay,
So I just wanted to say that.
thank you.
And then I guess we'll see what happens with the rest of the sand. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Is that a hand raise? No?
No, Madam Mayor, they're not.
Okay. So we'll now move to the consent calendar. I believe that Councilmember Mackin has a few things she'd like to correct on some minutes.
City Clerk, do you want me to read what exists and
Yes,
recommendation?
for the
Okay.
record.
This is in the minutes from October 19th, 2023. On page 8, number 2, it reads, "Can staff provide better accounting of money collected? What is the source of the money collected?" And I would suggest that be replaced by, "Can STR permit holders provide an accounting of their rentals with TOT payment? What is the source of their TOT payments?" So we weren't asking staff, we were asking staff to find a way to have the STR permit holders report the basis for their payment. And then we have page 7 of the minutes. Under item E, number 4, it says, at the September 7 meeting, there was a consensus, that's the key phrase, that a DIF for capital facilities such as major renovations of City Hall, a new fire station, et cetera, should be considered. And I would suggest that be replaced by, at the September 7 meeting, a DIF for capital facilities was suggested for consideration as a potential way to address major renovations of buildings such as City Hall, a new fire station, et cetera. Consensus kind of denotes almost a decision, and I don't think we were there. So I'd like to soften that a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss via consent calendar?
I'd make a motion to approve item D, E, F, and G with the suggested changes.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Okay, new business item H, consider adopting a resolution certifying the appointment of Clay Holstine as interim city manager in compliance with the California Public Employees Retirement Law and authorizing the mayor to sign an employment agreement with Mr. Holstine. Do we have a staff report?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Davis and members of the council. The city's current city manager, Mr. Holstine, will be retiring on December 27, 2023. In order for Mr. Holstine to continue to serve as city manager on an interim basis until the city council makes a permanent appointment of his replacement, he will need to return as a retired annuitant. Generally, a retired annuitant is not eligible to be hired by a local agency that contracts with CalPERS until 180 days have passed since the person's retirement. To fall within the 180 exception, certain conditions must be met. Those are, the person has not accepted any retirement-related incentives such as the golden handshake. The local agency is actively searching for a permanent appointment to the position. The appointment may only be made once. The governing board of the local agency has reviewed and approved the appointment agreement. The interim appointment and certification resolution must be done as a regular item agenda. The number of hours the retired annuitant may work in any fiscal year is limited to 960. The hourly rate to be paid the retired annuitant will not exceed the hourly rate paid to other employees performing the comparable work. The retired annuitant will not receive any other benefits, incentives, or compensation other than the hourly rate. And lastly, the appointment is necessary to fill a critical needed position. Staff recommends tonight that City Council adopt the attached resolution certifying Mr. Holstein's appointment as interim city manager and authorize the mayor to sign the attached employment agreement with Mr. Holstine. With that, I'm open to any questions you all may have.
Council questions?
No questions?
No questions.
And
Okay. We'll now open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak at this time?
There are no hands raised, Madam Mayor.
I'm assuming there's going to be no discussion on this, but I could be wrong, but I will ask for a first and a second to adopt a resolution certifying the appointment of Clay Holstine as interim city manager in compliance with the California Public Employees Retirement Law and authorizing the mayor to sign an employment agreement with Mr. Holstine. Do I have a first and a second on that motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Moving on to old business, item I, consider adoption of resolution to amend the master pay schedule.
Per CalPERS requirements, staff would like to read into record the executive bargaining group's new hourly rate after receiving a 3% increase effective the first payroll period in January 2022. Confidential management, currently filled position at top step per hour are finance director at $108.95 and human resources director at $106.93. Executive management, currently filled positions at top step per hour are assistant to the city manager at $87.25, city clerk at $70.59, community development director at $110.11, parks and recreation director at $104.99, and public works director at $128.90. Lastly, police chief at top step pay rate is $128.48. The rest of the bargaining groups, including our hourly unrepresented employees, will also receive a 3% pay increase. This concludes my staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council questions?
I have none.
No questions.
No questions?
None.
We'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
There are no raised hands, Madam Mayor.
Can I get a first and a second to adopt a resolution to amend the master pay schedule?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. Item J, receive information and consider providing direction on playground resurfacing project utilizing per capita grant funds from State Proposition 68. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I'm before you tonight to provide an update regarding the playground resurfacing project at the community park. In late 2020, the City Council adopted Resolution Number 2020-58, approving an application for per capita grant funds from State Proposition 68. These funds were made available to local government agencies for the purpose of local park rehabilitation and creation. Grant recipients were encouraged to utilize awards to rehabilitate existing infrastructure, and all projects not serving a severely disadvantaged community required a 20% match. After many years of struggling to maintain and repair the existing port-in-place surfacing at the community park playground, the city recognized that full replacement was necessary. The adjacent sand play area has been a contributing factor in the rapid deterioration of the port-in-place surfacing, which was installed in 2012 with the playground renovation. In addition to the adverse impacts the sand has had on the port-in-place surface, it also presents an increased risk of injury to park goers. A playground safety inspection was conducted in 2022 by a certified playground safety inspector, and the report recommended full removal of the sand given the fall hazards it creates. Last year, the City Council reviewed and considered the CIP list, which included the playground resurfacing project. The description specified that it would include excavation and replacement of the existing port-in-place surfacing, along with removal of the sand in the interest of improving public safety. The 2022-2023 fiscal year council adopted budget included the 20% match amount in order to complete the project. Subsequently, staff filed the necessary documentation required by the state, and through the city manager's contracting authority in July 2023, the city entered into a contract with Robertson Recreational Services to conduct the work. Robertson's scope of service and work includes installation of International Play Equipment Manufacturers Association certified taut turf port-in-place surfacing. Port-in-place surfacing has been installed in parks around the world for more than 35 years. It is used industry-wide as a preferred application for playground surfaces, given that it exceeds ADA compliance and accessibility standards. It allows for more inclusive play for youth and allows for caregivers of all abilities to engage with their children. Port-in-place surfaces serve as accessible paths of travel for persons with disabilities since they are firm, stable, and slip-resistant. The layers of taut turf port-in-place surfacing include a top layer comprised of virgin rubber, followed by an impact layer made of clean, recycled rubber installed over compacted base rock. EPDM, which is the virgin rubber, is a non-toxic, FDA-approved synthetic material often used in food-grade applications. It's the highest quality rubber on the market given its UV-resistant properties and durabilities. It is also important to clarify that Robertson does not use raw ground up recycled tires, often referred to as crumb rubber. The two layers are bound together by a basic single component polyurethane agent. The thickness of the poured-in-place surface varies throughout the playground to meet specific playground equipment fall heights and complies with the American Disability Act, the Consumer Product Safety Commission guidelines, and American Society for Testing and Materials Standards. The project is already funded by the Prop 68 per capita grant through the state of California, with the 20% match already allocated in the city budget and approved by council. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council questions? Who would like to go first?
No questions.
I know we got some down here. No? Yeah, no, I do. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, you start. Is your mic on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the staff report. So, you know, on the first page under discussion, it talks about the lifespan of these types of surfaces, and that the approximate lifespan is 15 years. We had the current one installed in 2012, so we're looking at 11 years, and it's beat to heck. So obviously, it didn't last the lifespan that we anticipated. Can you explain perhaps why that occurred?
I mean, the majority of the reasoning behind why we've witnessed a rapid deterioration of the poured-in-place surfacing compared to other comparable parks utilizing the same surfacing is due to the adjacent sand. Because it's rubbing on the poured-in-place surfacing, which removes the top coat sealant. And so that causes further damage to the surfacing. We have patched and repaired high traffic areas over the years, but it hasn't been enough to elongate the lifespan of the surfacing itself.
So doing the patch repair has been going on for quite some time.
Yes.
Okay, so then, you know, also just looking at the existing pour-in-place surface, you know, how does that current surface compare to what is being proposed here in the staff report?
Sure. So I wasn't here for the installation of the existing poured-in-place surfacing when the park was redone, but what I can speak to is the quality of the product that's being proposed for installation, and it's the highest quality available with the greatest thickness in order to protect the underlying layers and improve the lifespan of the surfacing over time.
Okay, so, you know, I went out to the playground a couple of days ago, you know, just looking at some of the open holes, right? I mean, so you see the shredded rubber that's in there. Is that the same material that's being proposed here? Do you know?
I can't speak for certain.
All right, so you haven't seen like the details of what was installed the last time?
Correct. I would assume that it's relatively the same with the top layer and then the recycled rubber layer directly underneath. I can't speak to the thickness of that layer. I don't have that level of information with me tonight.
Okay. All righty. And then, let's see. So on the second page, so that virgin rubber layer, so it's a 1/2 inch. Do you think that the current surface was installed at a 1/2 inch, or do you think it was thinner?
It's hard for me to specify without the specs in front of me. I would think that it would be close to that, but I can't say definitively.
Okay, and then are there some top coats that are thicker than a 1/2 inch?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, but you wouldn't know then what that might be.
Right.
The reason that I ask is that, you know, if you have a thicker top coat, then it'll just take longer to wear down to.
Right.
Right. Okay. Let's see. So this SBR layer, right? The styrene butadiene? Is that how you pronounce it? Butadiene rubber?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it says that it's clean and recycled. So what determines that it's clean?
They have specifications that are required that their products be tested. They have to go through appropriate channels for ensuring that there's no contamination. I know that there's a lot of articles out there concerned about the toxicity of and the chemistry of the rubber. And often, most of those articles are directed at tire crumb rubber,
Yes.
which is recycled used tires that have some, mixed in components or ingredients that could potentially off-gas or have a toxic element to them. Tot Turf does not use recycled used tires.
Okay, so I know it says in here Robertson doesn't use the raw ground up recycled tires. So no tires, no recycled tires are going to be in this this layer.
Correct. And their
Okay.
products go through Consumer Product Safety Commission, American Society for Testing and Materials, and then the International Play Equipment Manufacturers Association. So they have certifications for these products through all of those entities.
Okay, and then of course there's other surfaces that are out there for playground, for playgrounds. So looking at the engineered wood fiber, of course, sand. Those two particular types of surfaces, if you could just explain why those weren't considered and why this recommendation is before us over those two alternatives.
With loose fill material such as sand or mulch, tan bark, engineered wood fiber, they're not ADA compliant or accessible. And their effectiveness in terms of like fall and risk management are really contingent upon them being compacted, not having a disbursement of that types of material. So generally speaking, you can't push a wheelchair onto a sand surface or a wood chip surface, and an individual in a wheelchair may not be able to turn around. And that's not just speaking to children that might be utilizing the playground, but also caregivers. If a grandparent came to the park with a child and wanted to push them on the swing and it was in sand, they would be prohibited from utilizing the facility. So it creates a barrier for inclusive play.
Okay, and then I appreciate you allowing me to come to your office, the other day and ask questions and get feedback from you. And one of the questions was, like what other cities have kind of had similar situations as ours? You have a deteriorating surface. There are these different types of surfaces that you can install. I'm sure we're not the only community that had concerned parents, reaching out to us about, some of the potential toxins that might be in these products. And so if you could just share a little bit of that with us. Sure.
So it is uncommon to see a playground with dual surfacing adjacent to one another. It is not an industry best practice to have sand adjacent to pour in place or artificial turf surfacing. I'm not aware of any playgrounds in our neighboring agencies that have a similar situation. And I know I did reach out through the California Parks and Recreation Society when this came up to get a sense of what other agencies have experienced in similar processes. And we did speak with Tiburon and Belvedere. This came up for them a few years ago. They were anticipating a playground resurfacing project, and they did have a resident come forward with some expressed concerns about the materials and their safety kind of general makeup. And so they did some independent research of their own and ultimately did proceed with the project based on their findings. There are a few other professionals that I spoke with down in Southern California who experienced some similar projects and community response, and they conducted their own kind of independent research and came to the same conclusion and proceeded with the plan as it was originally intended.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Oh, I do have just one last question. So about the 20% match that the city, put forth, so that those funds came out of the general fund?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just kind of like thinking down the line, if the city did have an impact fee that went to rec facilities, could funds from, those types of impact fees go to, say, replacing a park playground surface?
Yes, you would just have to demonstrate the nexus between the impact on the facility versus what's proposed in terms of maintenance.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go next?
I don't have any questions. I have lots of comments.
Okay, I have questions. Is there a warranty that this, and like suggested ongoing maintenance? Like I heard that conditioning the rubber is maybe a thing.
There's a 5-year warranty.
What's the kind of maintenance on this?
They will provide a full maintenance manual to the city, but it's recommended every 18 months or 2 years that it's resealed with a top coat.
Have we done that for our existing one?
I know that we've done it at least once or twice since I've been here. I can't speak to before that. I'm sure if Randy was here, he could respond on behalf of the Buildings and Grounds crew.
Any idea how long the park is out of commission when that happens?
Oh, I think that's fairly quick. I think it's about a week at best.
Okay.
I mean, at most.
In your staff report, you mentioned in 2022, you had an inspector come. Can
Mm-hmm.
you just give more information about what the findings were?
Yeah,
That-
so it's standard practice in the Parks and Recreation world to have playground safety inspections conducted regularly. It was required as a condition of our grant award from the state to have one conducted. So we had the safety inspector come on site. He did inspect the protective surfacing. He prioritized removal of the sand. He identified a failure of the rubber. He identified the sand on the rubber as attributing factor to its failure. He prioritized it as a class 2, so could result in serious injury or temporary disability, correct as soon as possible.
And for the class 2 finding, did he indicate like specifically what would contribute to an injury? Is that just because the rubber is coming up and creating a tripping hazard, or like what specifically would contribute to a safety hazard?
He wrote sand on rubber. So one of the indicators underneath his audit has no tripping hazards, and he wrote sand on rubber. And I know, I mean, I personally have heard from residents that they have slipped or fallen on the rubber as a result of the sand.
So question for legal. If the city is aware that sand on rubber could contribute to an injury, and we had a means to rectify that problem and chose not to, could the city be liable for negligence if someone was seriously injured? Or is it just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I'll stop the question there.
Setting aside the word negligence, if the city has been advised that there is a particular hazard because of sand and rubber, and the city is aware of how to mitigate that hazard, one of which might be not having sand or not having rubber, and the city proceeds, yes, there is a chance of liability if somebody becomes injured because of it, but they're going to have to tie that injury to the reason that sand rubber combination is unsafe if they want to prove the city liable.
Okay. So if we just kept everything the same, but replaced the rubber, we kept the sand exactly where it is, and we just replaced the rubber, according to that inspector, we would not be really moving the needle as far as safety is concerned. That this would still be identified as a problem.
Yes, if we don't mitigate the risk, the next time we have an inspection, this would come up again.
Okay.
I do have a quick question.
Sure, jump in.
There seems to be a lot of people who love the idea of some sand. Is there a possibility to put a sandbox somewhere else?
If that was the direction from council, yes. And
I mean,
providing,
obviously, this has contributed to the degradation of the surface, but a lot of people love playing in sand. I'm one of them.
yeah,
So,
that could be a possibility.
so we wouldn't just rule out sand because it's a problem in this location.
Correct, although we would have to have independent funding for that. That would not come out of the Prop 68.
Understood.
Okay,
If it was also adjacent to rubber.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a sandbox, but anyone who has a sandbox or been in a sandbox knows that sand rarely stays in the sandbox, which is why we're partially in this position. And I mean, it's unrealistic to expect anything from kids other than taking sand to other places and the wind will take it and so on and so forth. So, okay. I'm sure I could think of a few more questions, but I'll wait. Just checking in to see if anyone else has any before we open it up for public comment. No? Okay. So we do have some slips here. We'll go ahead and open for public comment at this time. And I have a slip here from June Hebner.
Hi everyone. My name is June Hefner, and I want to voice my support in keeping play sand at the community park. I just want to remind you that play sand is not just for toddlers. My 6-year-old just the other weekend ran a very busy bakery in the sand area with her first grade friends, taking order for cakes and pies made out of sticks, leaves, and sand. I understand that the sand is hard on the rubber, but if you really want to take away the biggest factor in the deterioration of the rubber, you should ban the children, who are much harder on the rubber, with their constant running, jumping, bike riding, scooting, chalk drawing. They will always, generation after generation, cause more holes in the rubber. I personally feel that the rubber is unsightly once it's patched, with weird blobs of mismatched colors in the high, obviously, traffic areas like under the swings. The sand is a slippery issue, even on not on the rubber, but on the sidewalk between the play area and the benches where the parents sit. There's a stretch of sidewalk, I think it's concrete, and my kids slip all the time. It has nothing to do with the rubber, it's just the sand. That's just what the sand is. I think if the city regularly maintained the sand, either sweeping or blowing it back into the play area, slipping would not be so much of an issue, but I feel like I go to the playground all the time and there's sand everywhere. But I do ask the city consider other options. I just realized and learned tonight that Tanbark is not ADA compliant, but they do have it at the elementary school, which just did their playground a couple of years ago. I'm sure the principal there can enlighten you about why she still prefers the Tanbark over the recycled rubber. Thank you for considering all the options and for listening to your public.
My next slip is Linda Salmon.
Well, I love sand. Kids love sand. The grandkids love sand. Everybody loves sand. And it's really wonderful to have it. It has never been the best location for it, where it is now. It has always caused problems of one sort or another. Whether it's the kids that are zipping around trying to play on the gyms versus the younger kids often playing with sand, or when the older kids decide they're going to do something with the sand, it gets in the way. So I would be in favor of having a separate sandbox further away from the play structures. And I know, as you say, oh, well, then the parent has to look two places for their kids because some are older, some are younger, blah, blah, blah. But it's doable. And it does give parents who don't have sandboxes for their kids a place to have a sandbox. The big problem with a good sandbox is pets using the sandbox and other critters who come along and debris and so on and so forth. But that's always going to be the case, and that's always going to take maintenance. And so some of that maintenance can fall to the parents who bring their kids to the sandbox, where there's a very nice little, grassy area with tables around it, would probably be a really fun place for a sandbox for kids, or behind the swings on the other side of the little wall. Again, there are options. So I vote for having a sandbox, a separate sandbox that's not adjacent to the jungle gym stuff that goes on there. And that solves the problem with the sand on the walkway, the sand next to the drinking fountain, all the other problems that go with sand and water, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be my suggestion. But I do think that sand and sand play is really important for kids. They love it. They really love it.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Bousquet. Hold on, before you start, let me restart the timer so we make sure that you have all your time. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Bousquet. It's been about 1,000,000 years since I've been at a council meeting, so I actually have a little butterfly. I'm actually here to speak to you guys, but also to speak to our larger community. I just want to be like a little piece of living history and say that I remember the play structure before the playground that we had, and that thing was such a hazard, wooden, splintery, rickety, rackety, whatever. And we all came together, and it was the community park. We had everybody involved. We had the Mothers of Brisbane. We had the city itself. The city is not our enemy. The city was our partner. Caroline Chung got the Kaboom grant. The Lions Club helped build it. Like, everybody loves this park. So I kind of just wanted to say, I know that people are upset about the possible loss of the sand, and I totally understand that. But nobody here is doing this because they're trying to punish children. They're trying to keep our kids safe. My understanding is we're already in contract. This is a capital improvement with Robertson. And so to stop this contract, you're going to open yourself up to a whole bunch of other problems, I think. And I think if it's a safety issue, we need to do what's safe. And I was, fully invested in this playground. I did a lot of fundraising. I remember everybody being there. Cliff, I remember you doing cartwheels in the park the day we were building the park. It was just amazing. It was so much community. And I think we just need to pull together right now and think of solutions. And so if we need to make it safe, this is what we need to do the resurfacing. I love the idea of a sandbox somewhere else, maybe over in the garden. I don't know, maybe on the other side of the wall. But we're creative people and we can think about it. If there's no budget for it, I would challenge the new younger generation to come up with some fundraising ideas. We've done it before, we can do it again. So I think you're all wonderful, community and community members that serve us as part of the administration. And I want to personally just thank Caroline because she's amazing. She's always looking for solutions. She's always trying to figure things out. Noreen, I thought that was an excellent presentation. I learned a lot. So it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I just want to say that as someone who used to come to a lot of council meetings and go, I've learned my lesson, and I understand that you guys are all really working hard to make something great for all of us. And I look forward to seeing what comes next. So thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Mills.
Hi, my name is Sarah Mills. I am the newest generation of the Mothers of Brisbane. I promise this wasn't a setup. We did not talk before. I am also a mother of a 2.5-year-old, and I live a street away from the park. So I am there literally every day. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk about this. And again, for Caroline for doing such amazing work for our voices to be heard. I am all about safety. I have seen many children and adults slip on an almost daily basis, not only into the sand or from the where it is the tar pit into the sand, but also with the sand all around the area. And I too think that this is an opportunity for us to work with the younger generation, with the people who are willing, such as myself, to commit the time and the energy to come up with a positive solution. Because while I understand and appreciate the kinetic, the kinetic aspect of sand and the learning aspect of sand, I also learned today that the current structure is not ADA or inclusive. And to me, as an inclusive designer, I think that that is quite frankly unacceptable. It would be hard for me to watch a caregiver or a child not go and participate in some of these activities that our children are. So for me, this is both a safety and inclusion issue. And I would love to take the opportunity to work with the council, the Parks and Rec department, to figure out how we can accommodate all needs, the needs of an inclusive space, but also a space that promotes education. And while we're at it, there's a lot of other updates that could be made, like the holds on the rock climbing and the water. So I just also appreciate sand, but I don't think that it should be taken into consideration over safety. And I would love to work with the council to figure out how we can actually take this opportunity to make larger improvements. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
I see no more hands raised, Madam Mayor, but I do want to note for the record all the correspondences that the council received. We received correspondences from Elizabeth Larson, Elna Miller, Leora Zadig, Michelle Woodruff, Kalia Harding, Madeline Johnson, and Harley Maureen Smith Henderson. And all the council members received copies at the dais as well.
Okay. So we have no one attending via Zoom who wishes to make a comment.
I see no hands raised.
Okay. So we'll now open it up for council discussion. We'll start with Councilmember Mackin.
This is hard for me to even know where to begin. Thank you very much, Noreen. That was a comprehensive presentation. I appreciate all the materials that you gave us. I spent a lot of time researching this myself. I've got the counter up here full, and I have even more at home, and I had to boil it down to what I thought was important. And what was interesting to me about this is we got the string of emails from people, and sand is fun. I love sand. Maybe the sand goes elsewhere. Let's do an impact fee for sand, right? Okay. But taking apart sand as an issue, let's say we have a playground where sand is someplace else. What about the playground itself? So we'll go back 11 years? Is that the age? Okay, 11 years ago, the poured-in-place product was state-of-the-art. Everybody was afraid of the crumbled up tires and the toxicity. So poured in place was the way to go. So imagine my surprise to find out there's toxicity problems from poured in place. And this is of concern to me. Kids are very vulnerable. They're very close to the ground. So we're in a contract. What do we do about that? So let me just share some things I found. The material that's poured on top of the crumbled tires is called EPDM, a possible cancer hazard, irritant to lung, eyes, and skin. The International Agency for Research on Cancer says that carbon black, which is one of the materials in it, is possibly carcinogenic to humans. Short-term exposure to high concentrations is a respiratory irritant. There's also an adhesive that's used between the pour in place and the crumbled tires underneath. That adhesive is not benign. That also has a lot of toxic chemicals in it. I have one research from, this is a report from Toxic Use Reduction Institute at the University of Massachusetts. And Noreen, I'm calling this to your attention because I don't know who's right on this. They talk about playground surfacing materials, and they show on here engineered wood fibers as being ADA compliant on their chart. So I think that's something we would need to double check. Because they show the rubber surfacing, artificial grass, and engineered wood fibers. So I'm not sure if they're incorrect or if things have changed, but I'm just calling to your attention. There's one other thing that's really, really, let's say, even more important than is the material toxic? Is there sand on it? What would we use instead? Oh my. But let's say we went ahead with this surface and just said, well, the jury's out, they're still investigating toxicity. Here's something that really kind of caught my attention. One of the reasons why these rubberized surfaces seemed like such a great idea is a kid falls. Wouldn't you rather fall on a rubberized surface? Of course. Wouldn't you rather fall on that than even the grass or hard dirt? Well, okay. Rubber safety surfaces create rebound injuries. Because of the way in which rubber deforms and then bounces back, the brain hits the inside of the skull first on the downstroke and then on the rebound. Neurosurgeons tell us that the rebound damage is often much worse than the initial impact. And there was a study done I found in Australia that said the rubberized surface now causes 20% more injuries than materials used before. So you can throw up your hands and say, well, so what works? What's possible? The wood chips, from everything I looked into, are the big winners. So if you fell from 6 feet, a rubberized surface is kind of okay. If you fall from 9 feet, those wood chips are the best thing to prevent injuries. With the caveat, and Noreen, you mentioned it, those have to be maintained, meaning you can't just go hands off and say, we put the wood chips in and we'll take a look at it once a month, because they'll scatter. So you have to make sure that you've got groundskeepers, somebody going in there and putting them back in place. But they are the best assurance for your kids. If they fall on their head, they got a good chance not only of surviving, but not getting this horrible brain injury. And that has me really concerned. So I'm not sure what we do about this, but I have a problem now thinking about proceeding on this with what we know. When that went in before, we didn't know that. There were a lot of things we didn't know about the materials. I did find out why they offer state grants on this pour-in-place material. It's because the California State, the Department of Recycling, says that there's something like 40 billion tires a year that we don't know what to do with them. So they had a study that tried to determine how we can reheat rubber and revulcanize it and add things into it to create new polymers. And they found, we could create this pour-in-place rubber and recycle some of this scrap rubber, and then we don't end up going, what do we do with this stuff? It has to go to a landfill. So we'd repurpose it. Sounds great, right? Except that what happens to this playground out here right now after 10 years? Guess where that's going? To the landfill. So I have real concerns about this. I could tell you a lot more. I mean, I could just go on and on, but I don't want to. I'll let someone else talk. But I started out reading all of this and I was open-minded. Okay, we're going to resurface. We've talked about this. I am not blaming anyone. I think that sometimes you have to admit, my God, something new came about. We know more than we did yesterday. What are we going to do about it is what I'm going to ask all of you. Do we just say, no, we were going to proceed? Or do we recognize there's maybe some problems here? Thank you.
To follow up, I want to clarify, so from your findings, the EPDM top layer and the polyurethane coating, the adhesive, that's a different issue, but the rubber itself, is the toxicity that they're referring to specifically because it's recycled rubber? Because Noreen is saying this is, for lack of a better term, virgin rubber. So-
Not recycled, it's scrap. The layer underneath is recycled. It's recycled its tires, because there's two layers. The bottom one is what you probably heard as crumble before, what they used to use. The top layer is more scrap, and they don't know what to do with scrap either. So it's both. So part of the recycling is the bottom layer, and then the scrap is the other secondary problem. And that's why, and so in answer to your question I have here, EPDM rubber can contain, and I can tell you what these stand for, PAHs, VOCs, and a range of additives, including carbon black, oils, and minerals.
So can you respond to that, Noreen? Because you said that it is non-toxic and food grade, basically, with no crumble at all. So I'm sure that like 10 years ago, right? It was like the latest and greatest thing to be like, we built this using recycled materials. That's like on everything. Oh, this water bottle was made with whatever. And so I could see that like that playground that we have is a hot mess, right? It was in the time where everyone was trying to recycle everything. But it sounds like from the company that we're using, for them to specifically call out the fact that it's like food grade, I think there is this awakening across the playground industry that using recycled materials for the sake of recycling has a cost. So is the type of materials that Colleen is discussing any of the same materials that Robertson is planning to use?
What I know is what I've been told by the consultant is that the top layer is virgin rubber. It is not recycled rubber.
And what about the SBR?
That is recycled, clean rubber. Is not tire crumb rubber.
Top is not recycled, it's scrap rubber. There's a difference. Recycled is the tires, that's the bottom layer. The top layer is scrap.
Okay.
It still contains those chemicals and additives to make it what it is.
Do you have a response about engineered wood fibers? Because I actually, in my own research, saw some places describing them as ADA compliant and some places saying they aren't. So.
Correct. So it does meet the minimum requirements to be deemed ADA compliant, but it is not universally accessible. So its accessibility is contingent entirely upon the disbursement of the material itself, its compaction level. So unless there's no undulation or displacement of the loose material, then it would remain meeting the minimum ADA requirements. But that's not something that we can guarantee in a playground. We've experienced that with the sand, that there is disbursement that occurs.
You have to contain it.
Yes.
In other words, it's like a sandbox. If you just have sand, it's going to go everywhere. If you contain the sand, same thing with the wood fibers.
I also read though, like what would be your, I mean, I was also reading like it's not ADA compliant too if you're having any type of physical containment versus like you could go out there every day and manually return this sticks to the, playground, but I'm not seeing that happening. I'm not, are we going to hire somebody who's that's like their main focus is returning tambark to the playground? we could have had that person making sure that they're sitting there and making sure that the sand was immaculate this whole time then. So I just don't see that being, I don't see that being a feasible solution.
Couldn't we look into other playgrounds that use wood fibers, how they do it? Instead of reinventing the wheel, find out how they do it.
Do you know there's a park I used to take kids to all the time. It is so popular. It's over in Coyote Point. Yes? Any nods from the parents? No? It had, well, back when I would take kids there, it had a giant dragon. I don't know what it's called. It's like I think it's mostly wood chips at that park. But it's been a long time since I've been there. That one's really popular. And it's got tons of slides, huge dragon. No? Okay. Anyway. All right. Does someone else want to make a comment?
I have a couple more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Noreen, the playground structure, it's also a little worn. There's some pieces that have, the kids have broken off. But this particular grant is only for the surface. There's no money for the play structure, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then if we were to allocate money for upgrading the playground, that would be on the city's dime.
That's correct.
Okay. And so the current play structure, based upon your expertise in this area, like how long do you think that we can continue to use the existing play structure? And is there any type of maintenance that we can do to extend the life of the playground?
Yeah, certainly as components or elements of the play structure fail, they could be replaced or swapped out for new and updated elements. Caroline could probably speak to the manufacturer of the playground structure itself. I think it's a European-based company. But yeah, we would continue to conduct regular inspections, and as we identify additional needs for the structure itself, we could incorporate those requests into our annual budget request to council or the CIP.
Okay. Also, I remember that time back in 2010 and 2011, and of course the structure, went into place in 2012. But it was, a really neat community engagement. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of excitement. And it was pretty cool when the play structure was put together by community members. Is that something that is potentially feasible today? Having that same type of engagement with the community for a potential new playground?
Yeah, I think when that was done in 2012, it was with a Kaboom grant. And so there's certain guidelines that are restrictive in terms of community engagement and public process. But that's not to say that we couldn't embark on a similar process if the city had that desire to update the playground itself.
Okay, great.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, I'd like to address something that Councilmember Lentz brought up.
Mm-hmm.
This is again, University of Massachusetts. Here's their table, cost estimates for initial installation. Unitary rubber, that's poured in place. That's what we're planning. $50,000. Wood chips bark mulch, $2,600. $7,500 if you have to install drainage. Big difference.
Yeah, but not moving through with a contract also carries its own.
I understand that. I'm
cost.
purely going on a matter of conscience. I'm having a hard time with this.
I have a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
So to make everybody more comfortable about the potential safety of whatever we do, can we take the materials that Councilmember Mackin has compiled and have somebody do a little bit of research on them? That would be my recommendation.
Before we get to that, I'd actually like to ask legal, like, is this something that I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question? If we delay moving forward with this contract, does that have immediate ramifications, or can we ask Robertson for a little bit more time?
I'm going to have to look at the contract specifically, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Generally, when somebody's providing to a public agency, there are allowances for extra time, extra terms of cancellation, things like that, because you are a public agency. But I cannot be certain those are in there.
Okay. Yes.
So I think it's obvious that we need to do something about the risks that are there right now and move forward with mitigating any injury that may happen on our playground. I think I've had enough information from the public and from staff that the sand is not compatible with a rubberized surface. It's probably not compatible with a different type of surface also. It would change the compaction of wood chips or whatever is there. Play is inherently dangerous for anyone. Anytime we walk or run or do cartwheels or anything else, we are taking a risk. And I think that with this product that we've contracted for already, it is EPA approved and it is clean rubber on the top, rubber type material, that's food grade. And, yes, we could all go through our kitchens and everything else and take away all the plastic and rubber and mitigate some risk. And anytime you have a chemical product that is loose or being absorbed or being ingested, there is risk of it being a carcinogenic. They don't recommend that you chip off rubber and have your child eat it, or wood chips for that matter, I think.
Or sand.
Or sand. All those things have risk. And for me, I think that we've, looked at this project, we've contracted for this project, and having a sand play area that we develop later or redo the whole park or whatever we decide to do is something down the road to consider adding that feature back in, possibly finding a way to pay for it, or getting public community support to make that happen. But I think that we really need to mitigate this here and now. And, any delay that we have on our part is increasing our liability, so to speak, our possibility that some child or some caregiver is going to have an accident, a trip and fall, a slip and fall. And we knew that issue was still here. So I would be more in favor of moving forward with this. I think the products that they're using in this, and it does say that it's recycled clean rubber, SBR, and I did a brief lookup on it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's old tires. It may be old tires, but SBR doesn't necessarily have all of the same toxicity issues that some of the used rubber and tires do because they've had extra hardeners put in it. And maybe that's where the coal black comes in and the other things, other ingredients come in that make it more toxic. Some of the studies might have been for the loose material before it's poured in place, that the dust and prolonged contact can make that more of an irritant to the lungs or a carcinogenic or any of those things. And once it's down and cured and sealed, those properties that might make that, like household paint, is a danger. You can't have it in your home, a big bucket of paint laying there. But once it's put on the walls and it's off-gassed and it's dried, as long as it's not a lead-based paint, it doesn't have those same toxicities because it's in place, it's sealed, it's dried. And unless your child is, or I am peeling it off the walls and having it for a cracker, it's not that I'm going to be ingesting that product. Certainly for the first month or 2 months, it's still off-gassing. It still smells like paint or it smells like a new car. And yes, those can be carcinogenic. But I think for the liability and my concern for the community is that this moving forward with what we have here is the most prudent thing to do. I'm sure that if this play surface with the clean rubber on top and the sealant were deemed to be a significant risk for children that are at the play yard for maybe an hour every day for the first 16 years they're alive, that the EPA and the FDA would have made that decision and it wouldn't be a product that we're still using at the highest grade as long as it's maintained. And as a city, we just need to make sure that we do the maintenance on it and make it where there's not chunks of it for children to be putting in their mouths or to be tripping on. So that's my 2 cents worth on this.
For me personally, I think whatever we have should be ADA. And it should be ADA all the time. I mean, I don't think that the responsibility, I don't think that we can bear the responsibility to make sure wood chips are compacted properly every single day at all times. It's just a standard it's not achievable. It's not realistic. I see the benefits of sand. I played in that playground growing up as a kid. There's actually a lot more sand there. There was also a little bit of rubber back then. It was mostly sand. And I made so many friends playing with sand, and you take someone's toy on accident and then you start a conversation and all of that happens while you're playing next to each other and you're using your imagination. And so I think that sand is a critical part of a child's play experience. I would be in favor of adding sand possibly on the other side of the swings. We didn't even used to have swings in the first playground. For me as a kid, that's always what I felt was missing. And then with the new rendition of the park, we got swings and we got an ADA compliant swing. And those were super rare at the time. So I would be in favor of finding another place for sand, but in a place that's just as directly adjacent to the existing structure as possible. I don't think it's realistic to have something behind the bathrooms or needs to be in eyesight of parents. I could see if sand's everyone's favorite, I could see taking out the swings and putting sand there if we needed something closer. But I think that the sand would end up drifting onto the sands. If we have sand in the equation, it's drifting other places. I would like the city to make a commitment to do regular maintenance every 18 months on the rubber. I think it becomes a really big problem if you're having quote unquote recycled materials that are beneath the first layer. Becomes an issue to me when that first layer is penetrated because it's not been properly maintained. And then you start having problems with more exposure. But sand and rubber, it's always going to be an issue when they're side by side. And that's just a fact of the matter. We could make it exactly as it is now, just upgrade the rubber, and we would be back in this same position. And to me, that's not a good use of the public's money. It's not being a good steward of public interest and public money. And I think to be aware as a council member that this has been brought to our attention by an inspector who has said this is a tripping hazard or a slipping hazard. To ignore that, to me, is negligent for the sake of having sand. And I think that if a kid slipped and fell and was left with a serious injury, we would all sit back and say, I would be willing to forego sand if it meant that a child wasn't seriously injured because of its presence. We would all say that. Because at the end of the day, safety is the most important thing when we're talking about kids. I share some of the concerns about the materials, but I think staff has done their due diligence in looking at what's there. And none of the alternatives seem like good alternatives if we want to preserve something that's ADA compliant. Hey, we can make the whole thing sand for all I care. But that means that it's going to cut out a portion of our population that's going to come and say, I was able to enjoy this park, I was able to enjoy this facility, and now I can't because the surface is not compatible with my physical needs. And we would feel bad about that too. So to me, parks should be for everybody. They should always be ADA compliant if we can help it. And you try to source the best possible materials from the best company, and you try to please everyone. Unfortunately, it's not always possible. But I think that, and once I started hearing the information coming out about the rubber and the importance of sand and thinking back, so, I worked at Silver Spot for many years. I was a kid in this community. I played. There was no park when I was a kid, 3 or 4. I was the first generation of the Brisbane Community Park. I was there on day 1. I spoke at my first city council meeting at 4 years old because the city council was considering what should be at the park. So I'm very invested in this. And one day, if things go according to my plan, I'll have kids that will be playing in that park too. So I'm highly invested. And so when I started seeing the comments coming in about the sand, I was like, yeah, that's right. We'll keep the sand. It's important. It's for imagination. And I remember making volcanoes and making cakes. And then in the rubber, yes, we can't have that. So much off-gassing. But then you have to just continue to dive in and dive in and dive in. And there's only this one conclusion that I can arrive at, which is that there are trade-offs, there are consequences. You take out something to fix one problem, and then, you leave it all sand, and now it's inaccessible. And so to me, having something that's not ADA accessible, it's not ADA compliant, it's not a trade-off that I'm willing to make. I'm not willing to take away a facility from people that have access to that facility now. And so, we have, I think, I was skeptical, but I think that Noreen's response satisfies me. But I would like us as a council to quickly prioritize figuring out if we can make sand a possibility. I mean, hey, things surprise me, but I don't think it should be that expensive to put a little hole in the ground and put some sand in it. You know, you never know. All of a sudden things are $100,000 and you have no idea how they get to be that expensive. But that's that's where I'm at. And I would hope that if we've heard from so many parents, and I'm so happy that you took the time, and this is for people, you know, who might be watching. Thank you for sending me an email. I don't know what's happening on Facebook. I hear things are happening on Facebook, and that's great that people are discussing things that matter to them in their community. But I need you to tell me. I can't mind read, and I don't want to hear it I don't want to hear it secondhand. I want you to engage with me. I want you to email me. I want you to tell me how you feel. I want you to come to a meeting, because that's how we make good decisions that are reflective of what you want. And we can't always please everybody. But clearly this is an issue that people are passionate about. People are passionate about, they're engaged with. Let's work together. I've heard people say, hey, we'll work on a solution. Come, let's talk about how we can make a sandbox, how we're gonna fund it. We might need your help, in all honesty. Let's throw some money together as a team here, have a fundraiser, and see if we can incorporate sand in a way that really makes sense.
Thank you for that. First of all, I just want to thank those who showed up today, right? You know, it takes a lot of courage to come to the council meeting and speak before us. Also the folks that sent the emails, the text messages, and, you know, that's important. You know, the research that you read, Colleen, I also read it too. I got it from some parents, right? That, you know, shine the light on, you know, this issue. And, you know, originally I was thinking of the engineered wood fiber, because I read that same thing and it said, yeah, it's ADA compliant. And I was concerned about the toxins as well in the rubber. But that's what you do. You dig a little bit deeper. You understand, you know, what is the true material, right? That's going into this particular playground surface. There's no question that I'm sure in some parts of the country, they put in playground material using the old tires, and it's awful. I'm sure that happens a lot. And then you get information like this, right, where these things could or can, you know, have these toxins in them. But Noreen has done the research, and the company that we've chosen will not put recycled tires into the material that's going to go into that surface. You know, the ADA compliancy, you know, you don't want to keep anybody from accessing the playground, you know, whether it's a kid in a wheelchair or with crutches or an elderly, you know, person who's there with their granddaughter. You want to make it accessible for everyone. And this particular type of surface allows that to occur. You know, the play structure, it needs an upgrade. It definitely needs an upgrade. And like you were saying, Madison, you all need to, you know, just start chirping away and make that a priority for us, right? Part of what the council does, like one of the main things that we do is we deal with the budget, right? And we list our priorities. And so, you know, many times, you know, of course, priorities are things that keep us healthy and safe, right? But also priorities are what makes the town fun and engaging, right? And we have to make sure that we have a balance with that, and getting that feedback from all of you, you know, helps us be more of a public servant, right? That's what our real roles are supposed to be. So I really like the creativity about, you know, doing a sandbox someplace else. I think that's brilliant, right? Because a lot of the feedback that we got from parents is that they want to have sand, and it's like, okay, can we do it in a way that protects the integrity of the rubberized surface while also allowing kids, to engage in it. And I think so. And I'm glad that, you want to make that a priority, Madison. It shouldn't cost very much money at all. And we should work with the community to make that happen. So hopefully that happens sooner than later. Not like how we left the playground surface, going all this time, patching it up. We should make it a priority and have it occur sometime next year. So I'm in favor of moving forward with what is being proposed by staff.
I think it's interesting for people to understand that the process to get that money was how many years?
3.
Yeah, so it's not like we were dragging our feet. We're waiting on a response from the state for a lot of these things sometimes, and it takes a lot more time than any of us would like.
Do you want to weigh in on?
I'm good. There's nothing more to be said. I do trust the research that's been done. Everything has an inherent danger, as you said. Walking down the street has an inherent danger. Who has not fallen off a swing? How did I break my arm? In the park. Kids are going to get hurt in the park. We can't protect them from everything. Do we have any numbers that suggest that all of these surfaces that are used all around the country, probably not of this quality because it's very expensive, do we have any numbers that suggest that there has been children injured by these play surfaces? That I have not seen. So I'm okay to go ahead with it as well.
You're going to get injured on any surface. Fact of the matter. That's just how it's going to be. But the combination of sand with rubber is of a different level of risk than just sand, just rubber, just wood chips, so on and so forth. So there's no way to maintain those two things at the same time next to each other without perpetuating a significant slip risk.
And getting the sand off the sidewalk.
Another hand raised, come up.
I've seen these little signs at other parks and other places, and maybe because they're private, I don't really know, but it says basically, what you said earlier, play is inherently dangerous. Please use at your own risk, to remind the parents and say, parents, please supervise your young children, so that people know. And they're little plaques that, go here and there. And they're just reminding, it's just like those little signs on the gas station that says, this chemical is it could be carcinogenic. You use it your own risk. The signs on the backs of the cigarettes that tell you the same thing. So, does it obviate, people's responsibility for what they're doing, what they're using? But I would like to see unanimous vote. And so when people are still concerned that, well, the topping could be chemically dangerous or something like that, just, they use at your own risk. Reminder to people. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. You can ask legal.
What I've noticed is people really don't seem to read any signs. Pick up after your dog. No one reads that one. I tell you that right now. But, that doesn't stop us from putting
We do
them
have
up.
a sign at the
Either
playground.
know it or
though.
you don't know it.
Yeah.
There's rule followers and then there's not.
Okay, so do you have any follow-up? Because I know this is not totally in alignment with where you're at.
I'm not going to be in alignment because I did a lot of research, and some of the comments that you've made, I think if you read more, you might understand more. I'm not a scientist, but I know how to look at research, and I still have concerns. If I had kids, I would be concerned. That's just, they're kids. It's important. I have a problem with this. But I'm sorry. That's just where I'm at.
So is it my understanding that this was really an update And so there's really no vote that's
Oh, yeah, it's receive information. That's correct.
necessary. And I'm not sure if legal wants to weigh in that we need because we've had the public comment and we've had this discussion, if staff would want us to make a motion necessarily to go ahead with the contract and expedite it or not. And is that something staff is looking for, or is that something staff would not want?
But I would encourage staff not to say anything except take direction. You don't need to vote. If you think about the discussion tonight, there's been 3 arguments about 3 different surfaces, all of which have pointed out there's a risk with this one, a risk with that one, a risk with that one. We didn't cover grass, but I'm sure there's an issue there. So there's just a lot on the table. Staff can take it in, and if they think there's another issue, they can come back to the council. If not, you've previously taken the action needed.
Okay, thank you. Then I make a motion that we
Wait, we don't need a motion.
No,
we
Yeah.
just close the discussion.
Yes.
Well, I see another hand from the public, so I'll allow you to.
Thank you.
Wait till you get here because the people at home can't hear you.
Thank you again for having the discussion, and thank you, Councilmember Mackin, for doing all that research. I didn't know that before. The one thing I will say is, as the condition stands today, I have literally seen children put the rubber in their mouth.
Yep.
So while I recognize that there's concerns of the material for the new material, there is, beyond the sand, there is an immediate need for taking care of the rubber that sounds like we know it has some concerns today. On multiple cases, taken rubber out of not only mine, but other children's mouths. So I think that is a concern today as well, in addition to the sand. So thank you.
There are patching materials that I read about the surface that we have that we probably should be patching that. Said that if you wear down that top layer and you get to the bottom layer, you can actually repatch that surface. So that's something that even going forward on this, that should be looked at. And I would add one more thing. There is a peninsula community that has banned all of these artificial surfaces.
It's artificial turf, right? So is that,
All these artificial surfaces.
are you talking about, which city are you talking about?
I don't remember which city it was, but it's artificial surfaces. Outdoors.
You know, if I can just ask Noreen to look into one thing, and that is, you know, that top surface is a 1/2 inch. You know, if you could just explore perhaps what it would cost to maybe make it 1 inch, and if that is, does that make sense, you know, with the impact that, you know, jumping on it and things like that, just to.
Yeah, I can bring that to Robertson and then follow up in an email if that's sufficient.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
So there's a 5-year warranty on the new fill. Staff the city, we can, you know, try to make sure we're doing active maintenance every 18 months. And maybe we open up, you know, a discussion a few years down the line about re-envisioning if we're going to remove the structure or change the structure in any way, that's now going to leave holes where this new fill hasn't touched, and that's going to be patched and so on and so forth. I think that you once you start patching and there's holes, I think things start degrading much faster. So, you know, maybe we can take the time, get a group of parents together. If we're going to re-envision the park as a whole, we can do that. And maybe at that time can reevaluate if we want to use wood chips or what have you, or there may be something else on the market at that time. So I think staff's sounds like enough direction. Okay. We'll now move on to staff reports. Item K, city manager's report on upcoming activities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief this evening. The city's annual winter cleanup is happening this weekend, November 4th and 5th, with South San Francisco Scavengers dropping off dumpsters starting tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at the locations marked earlier this week by Public Works. I believe they're pretty similar, if not exactly similar to previous years. We ask the public to please utilize the dumpsters this weekend to drop your yard trimmings. A reminder that no plastic bags are allowed. At the last meeting, I mentioned the upcoming repaving work on Visitation. That work is starting on the upper part of Visitation first, from Mendocino all the way to San Benito on Monday, November 13th. Businesses were hand-delivered notices of this upcoming work by city staff. And finally, at your next meeting on November 16th, a draft dark skies ordinance will be presented for a first reading. We had 173 individuals in the community answer the Open Space and Ecology Committee survey. So we thank everyone for taking time to participate. If you'd like to review the draft ordinance, you can view the Open Space and Ecology's committee meeting of October 25th. And of course, it will be in our packet once we present that to the council.
Okay. Item L, countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. I see a report here to be given by Councilmember Mackin and then Mackin and O'Connell for open space. You want to start? Yours is liaison to complete streets and safety and then open space and ecology.
I'm not going to go in detail. I'm not going to go in detail because those are coming back to the council. Open space and ecology was reviewing, and Terry, you can join in on this. We were reviewing what they've put together on an invasive species ordinance. And it's quite interesting. We had some lively discussions about plants and problematic plants. The Complete Streets Committee has been working well over a year on looking at the feasibility and the merit potentially to adopt a parking permit program. And I would emphasize that that is to ensure that everybody in Brisbane has a place to park. They've done a lot of work and it was very interesting and gave them a little bit of direction that they will be coming back, I believe, in January with a draft to present to the council. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I also had a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting. Briefly on that, what's being looked at more and more is the difficulty of finding clean energy projects. And so one of the goals that's going to be examined in the coming months is putting together what are called DERs, which is distributed energy resources, which means utilizing in a certain city or a neighborhood. And if you have solar on your home, a lot of people, they can afford the solar or they get a solar program where they don't buy the panels, but then that just kind of fuels their house. And after dark, there's a problem. And that's where we start drawing other energy sources that are not clean from the grid. So one thing that Peninsula Clean Energy has been looking at is potentially putting batteries with people's homes where PCE would own the battery. And it would be a sharing so that if you had your solar panels, you get the benefit of some of the battery, but PCE can draw that after dark and put that back out to the customer. So it's essentially, to boil it down, it's like forming microgrids and doing that closer to home in neighborhoods and in cities makes us more resilient to brownouts and shutdowns with inclement weather. So there'll be more on that coming back because it's a lot of feasibility has to be looked at in terms of cost and how fast this could happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have a question or you have a report out?
I have a report out.
Okay.
And yes, I was with Councilmember Mackin on the open space and ecology proposal for the invasive species, and very interesting the way they're going to try to go about and do a soft rollout so that it's not as painful as it could be. And then I also had a airport roundtable field trip, my first field trip, and we went to Sacramento and went to the Tracon airport tracking system, where we saw what the FAA is doing and how all of the different sectors control traffic overhead. And we found out some of the limitations on what the air traffic controllers have as far as traffic and how they can divert planes to our benefit or to our not to our benefit, as to how they're sending planes out and keeping them safe in the air. And it was quite interesting because air traffic controllers don't have a map, a land map. There is nothing on their screen that shows they're flying over Brisbane or flying over Palo Alto or any of the cities. They are only concerned with the airspace, and they're only very concerned about their immediate airspace and what airspace they can't go in. So that was very interesting. We had a very good talk with one of the management there about what we can do and how we can approach different flight patterns. And one of the biggest problems they have is that because each air traffic controller has probably 20 different air patterns they can utilize, they can't keep adding more patterns for different weather conditions and for different scenarios of how busy it is, because that would be too many different traffic patterns for them to memorize. So they have to know all these different traffic patterns for each individual usual standard operating procedures. So it was interesting to see what their concerns were and what their solutions were and how it all plays together with how we hear jet noise. So we'll see how that works out and what recommendations the airport roundtable brings back after learning this. There was 5 of us, 5 members on the field trip, and it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there because it is a fascinating place. You know, to go inside the control room where the air traffic controllers are doing their work and to look over the shoulder of an air traffic controller as they're directing airplane traffic over the Brisbane area, right? And you know, going there gives you a different perspective and an understanding of the stress of the job and the importance of it. So, yeah.
I was surprised. They all looked pretty cool and calm and collected, I would say.
I think you have to be that type of personality in order to handle that job.
I have a question for Terry.
Sure.
So did you get any insight as to why the 2:45 a.m. departure out of SFO for the Amazon Air every night does a sharp turn over Brisbane?
They couldn't discuss exact flights. They did discuss with us the method for reporting bad flights and how they actually, the air traffic controllers have ramifications if they are diverting flights or vectoring flights in a way that is against their policies. And so a lot of those things they take under consideration and they review each air traffic controller's work They can't discuss when there's, the word I'm thinking of, I can't think of it. When there is a problem with a controller, what he's done, what they've done, that doesn't meet their criteria, they can't discuss any discipline action because that goes into being
Personnel.
a personnel issue
Yeah.
and they can't discuss that. But they do take it very seriously. That they couldn't discuss a specific flight. We did bring in some flight tracks and things that have been problematic. I'm not sure that was acknowledged by them. They know about that flight. I don't know what they can actually do about that flight.
Interesting.
Anyone else?
Oh, I have plenty of things to talk about.
Okay, not public art though, because we're reporting on that next meeting.
Yeah, no. So I just want to go back and mention that Nicole and I and a couple of other people went to the AARP regional meeting a couple of Wednesdays ago. And I think we learned a lot of information about the stuff that AARP puts out that can be beneficial to everybody in this community. And the publications are astronomical. The other thing we found out is there's a group that works with the AARP who is potentially going to be helping us with one particular resident relative to getting compensation through FEMA and other agencies that is not just your stock answer from FEMA. And if FEMA says no, this was a very interesting presentation, them saying, don't accept no from FEMA ever, challenge every time they say no. So that was some very good information that we're still putting together. The CCAG meeting that I went to that I didn't get an opportunity to report out on was the extension of their fast track lanes, followed up by what's going to come out and asking us to turn all of our freeways into toll lanes. So I won't comment on how I feel about all of that. I'm just going to say that is on the table. We also had a planning meeting talking about some planning issues that need to be brought to the full council moving forward. So I can't bring the specifics in, as well as meeting with Prologis in an economic development subcommittee meeting, and first time we've ever met with them. First time I've ever met with them, and I felt that they were very open.
Anyone else? Okay. Oral communications number 2, is there a member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Oh, wait, no, written communications, sorry.
Aside from the correspondence received about the sand play and the community park, we received written correspondence from Dana Dilworth regarding closed session, consideration of the sale of rails to trails public land within our watershed without proper authority. Whitney Jones from Sangamo Therapeutics, Inc. It was a warn notice to the Brisbane City Council.
We got a warn notice. Okay, oral communications number 2. Is there a member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Come on up.
Having just returned to Brisbane, I'm not familiar with what's going on with this piece of land, but I did see the letter when I came in this evening and about the sale of this property. And so I have a concern about it, you know, and I'm not in favor of just selling off the land that we have.
Okay.
So that's about it. But
Okay.
I don't know if you have any details about what's going on.
It's closed
with it.
session, so we can't,
You can't discuss it.
yeah, we can't provide more than, you know, what's listed in the agenda packet.
Well, it really wasn't on the agenda. It was just a letter
Closed
that she,
session.
that she wrote
It's
about.
on closed session.
Yeah.
So it is, I'll tell you this, the property is portion of Lot 1. You can go back and review this tape, okay? Portion of Lot 1, Block 1, Tract 862. Approximately 29,000 square feet, located generally west of South Hill Drive.
Yeah.
That's the property and we're referencing.
So I'll come to City Hall and see if I can look it up and
Yes.
find out about what's
I'm
going
sure,
on.
come to City Hall, staff can point it out, which parcel it is to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Anyone else?
No further hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:30 on the dot.